Tonight, we journey together into the legendary story of Irion, the forgotten child of Hystos, a demigod not born atop Olympus, but in a place of fire and iron, deep within a mortal's forge. His destiny was clear, yet daunting: to steal the perpetual flame from Mount Olympus and spark hope for a world whose hearths had all but faded. But what challenged him was anything but ordinary. He faced the monstrous three-headed gatekeeper of the underworld, a jealous immortal with feathered shoes, and an oracle who called down storms and saw only one ending: Irion's death. Now, before we settle in, if you enjoy tales where old myths meet fresh mysteries, please remember to like and subscribe. And as you listen, share with us. Where are you right now, and how late is it for you? Sometimes our stories wake us up more than the day. Other times, they gently lead us into dreams. So, dim the lights, let the gentle hum of a fan surround you, and join me. Let's discover what tonight holds. In the flickering forge of Myne, where workers bent iron with prayer and persistence, lived a woman whose skill rivaled the tales of gods. Her name was Callista, a mortal blacksmith with a fiery spirit and a hammer that sang with each strike. Her swords could split spears in flight. Her armor whispered to be favored by the war god himself. The deities above took notice, but only one approached: Hystos, the outcast, the limping god of the forge. He watched her in silence, not for her looks, for Callista wore soot as her badge and carried the scent of smoke and iron. It was her movements that drew him, familiar yet magical. On a night when the red moon hung low over the Aegean, Hystos entered her forge, silent as smoke and shadow. He brought no gifts, spoke no proclamations. He simply came near. That night, the fire blazed brighter than ever. Months later, Callista bore a child, Irion. He greeted the world not with a cry, but with eyes aglow like embers. The forge's fire arched as if in recognition. The midwives murmured. One whispered, "He's touched by gods." Another crossed herself, and the eldest said quietly, "He doesn't belong here for long." Irion grew faster than others. By 5, he shaped metal. At 7, he forged a flawless blade, warm to the touch. He did not play, nor did he deceive. There was a calm about him that unsettled the villagers. They didn't understand, and so they called him cursed, the child of a god without followers. Other children shied away. Priests did not offer blessings. But Callista's love was fierce. She taught him the meaning of fire, not just how to shape it. "The flame listens to those who listen to it," she would say, "not to those who shout." When he turned 16, Irion worked day and night, forging arms for faraway lands and distant kings he'd never see. Still, something deeper moved within him. He knew he was not meant just to serve. He was born to remake the world. Long ago, the eternal flame was a stolen gift, brought to humanity by Prometheus. It was more than warmth. It was the spark of thought, art, and wonder. It made people more than beasts, but as time passed, the spirit of rebellion faded. People forgot what was given them, and the gods turned their faces away. It crept in quietly, the glow at every hearth turning to flicker, forests growing colder, storms dragging on, crops failing even in springtime. Children shivered even in summer, clinging near cold chimneys. Old women whispered over ashes, while priests warned of punishment and scholars blamed the heavens. Yet, the greatest fear was not the end of the world, but abandonment, the feeling that the gods no longer cared. The truth: high atop Mount Olympus, the gods had hidden away the last true flame, guarded in a sacred brazier, never seen by mortal eyes for generations. None dared risk another rebellion like the one that began with Prometheus. "Let them suffer," they said. let them remember their place. But not every god agreed. In hidden corners, rumors spread. Dryads spoke of a boy of fire. Nymphs saw sparks in a young man's gaze. The wind from Myne carried the name Irian. In the silent halls of Delhi, the oracle dreamed of fire in human form, lighting cities with its path. Even old, forgotten temples, where candles had gone cold, awaited the sound of a blacksmith's hammer. Irian, unaware, found his task growing harder, the iron tougher, the flames fading, the warmth that once came naturally slipping from his grasp. Unseen, gods and mortals alike were watching, and for the first time in ages, the sacred flame atop Olympus flickered. Not for a god, but for a boy born of sorrow and fire. Inside Irian, something deep began to ignite. Delhi was fading. Where once kings and warriors journeyed for Apollo's voice was now a hushed, cracked ruin. Its springs only missed, yet one voice remained, deep in the mountain, a tired oracle. Irian entered quietly. No one welcomed him. The torches had long gone out. Ivy clung stubbornly to crumbled altars. Thunder murmured, not with rain, but with an ancient vigilance. Descending into the hollow chamber, he came to the last remaining oracle, clad in violet, with ash-pale skin and blinded eyes bright as storms. Before he could speak, she drew a sudden breath as though the flame itself returned to her. "Irian," she hissed, though none had given his name. He said nothing. "You will climb that mountain. You'll take the flame. You will die." Her voice cracked like thunder in the stillness. Unmoved, Irian listened. He had heard stories, oracle riddles laced in mysteries. But this wasn't a riddle. It was finality. She stood, moving like a wisp of smoke. "The gods will resist you. The world will cry for your failure. The fire, what you seek, it's not yours. It was once stolen, and the price was endless chains." Irian stepped closer, hands curled tight. "Then let me pay it." Silence. Then she laughed, soft, weary, as if she'd seen this tale unfold too many times. "You already are," she breathed. The room grew dim, the storm outside growing to a roar. An ancient power hung in the air. Then, just as sudden, all was calm once more. The oracle sagged onto her stone seat, her mouth only letting out a wisp of smoke. The prophecy was finished. Irian left without a word, but her vision followed him in every fire, every dream, every shadow. The gods had cast their lots. Nothing, Olympus included, could predict what would happen when humanity was given its fire once again. To step upon Olympus, a soul had to be proven. The legends said Olympus's base was made not of rock or snow, but of spirit, and beneath it, a gate locked by silence, watched by the first and deepest fear. Cerberus, the hound of the afterlife. None could cross that threshold without brushing past death itself. Irian knew the stories. He studied them as closely as a smith studies heat. He understood what would lie beneath Olympus. Reaching that sacred flame meant more than climbing. It meant going down into the heart of the underworld. He prepared not with blade and shield, but through craft. For 3 days and nights he forged a collar, not for attack, but as a symbol of yielding. He used black glass, iron, and a single ember from his mother's forge. Engraved upon it were 3 names: memory, loyalty, grief, one for each of Cerberus's heads. On the 4th morning, Irian stood at the looming mouth of a cave, a path descending without end. The wind there struck not skin, but soul, carrying the faint scent of forgotten prayers. He walked deeper, passing bones that glimmered, torches lighting themselves as he went. Gradually he heard it, a layered, heavy breath, like 3 thunderclouds asleep. He found Cerberus at last, resting on a bed of pale ash and bone, 3 heads dozing in different rhythms. Its fur was darker than any shadow, its eyes closed, but its ears twitched to every sound. Irian drew no sword. He knelt, held forth the collar, and began to hum, a melody his mother used to soothe him when the night felt too large, too cold. The center head shifted, the left eye opened golden and watchful, the right bared its teeth, then paused. The song lingered in the cavern, and in that shared stillness, Irian slipped the collar on. Cerberus exhaled, a soft, grumbling sigh, and a door at Irian's back opened in quiet respect. Irian had passed through death, and death had stepped gently out of his way. The path to Olympus was not a marked trail. There were no signs, no constellations to follow, only steep stone, slicing wind, and memories echoing on the breeze. Irian trusted not certainty, but instinct. His hands bled. The divine fire inside him flared through each wound, the mountain testing him at every step. At last, in silence rather than spectacle, someone appeared ahead. Hermes, the trickster and courier of the gods. He stood on a rocky ledge, dressed in the plain garb of a traveler, sandals feathered, eyes sly and quick. He spun a coin with a crooked smile. "Well," he called, "I pictured you taller." Irian did not pause. "I know why you're here," Hermes went on, strolling beside him as though floating. "You wish to return fire to the world. So sweet and so naive." Irian only said, "Then halt me." Hermes grinned. "Stop you? No, I'm here so you know the truth. You step into the god's own vault, telling a story that isn't yours to tell. Yet still, I'm here," Irian replied. That crooked smile softened. "You hope to mend a rift that was torn for a purpose," Hermes warned. "The flame, a gift turned mistake. We now guard it, not out of love, but out of fear." Irian met his eyes. They've forgotten why they fear its power. At that, for the first time, Hermes' mask slipped. The air tightened. The coin vanished. His wings fluttered in agitation. "Think you're Prometheus?" he whispered. "You're not even a spark compared to him." "I'm not trying to be him," Irian answered quietly. "I only wish to finish what he started." Hermes stepped closer and pressed 2 fingers to Irian's chest. "Then here's my parting gift." Sharp pain twisted through Irian, not in his body but deeper, within his spirit. "The fire you seek," Hermes breathed, "will consume all you are." And then, Hermes was gone. Thunder rolled and the mountain shuddered. No rain fell, but a storm of consequence had begun. Irian ascended, now bearing a curse, icy, persistent, ever-present. At first, it was a faint tightness, an ache in his breath. But every step upward made it worse. Slowly, the man he was being stripped away, layer by layer, leaving behind only raw will and fire. Mount Olympus was alive. Its stones shifted beneath him. The wind howled like ancient ghosts. Nothing living grew past a certain point. No trees, no birds, not even stars showed themselves. The mountain demanded a sacrifice with each step, and Irian gave it, slipping, bleeding, steadying himself each time a sudden surge of inner fire steadied his steps. He climbed, thinking always of the dying homes, the shivering children, his mother's worn hands still forging warmth. He remembered what warmth truly meant, even as Olympus offered only resistance. Clouds gathering, lightning crackling as if the gods themselves stalked the ridge, awaiting his fall. He passed ruins, temples carved right into the mountain, long abandoned and left to crumble. Broken statues of Athena, toppled columns once dedicated to Zeus. In that silence, Irian saw the truth no one dared say. The gods weren't mighty any longer. They were afraid someone outside their number might bring fire's light back, unbidden. Still he pressed on, bleeding, burning, rising above the clouds. And then, through the haze, he saw it, the sacred brazier, waiting. The summit was nothing like he imagined. No grand gates, no gods bearing golden welcome, no thunderous welcome. Just quietness and the flame. It stood atop a weathered black stone, older than memory. The fire dancing within it was not red or gold, but a pure, living white. It didn't flicker. It gazed back. Irian stepped forward. The warmth crept into him, gentle at first, as if it remembered him too. His breath caught, and that cursed ember Hermes planted now thundered in his chest, calling to the flame. Time slowed. He saw visions, whole cities rising around firelight, his mother's forge burning against winter's cold, civilizations built and lost, each centered on fire. He also saw the punishment. Prometheus chained, tormented day after day, gods calling it justice. When Irian saw only their fear, he could turn away, leave humanity to shiver and adapt. Or he could remember his mother's name, Callista, and choose. He reached for the flame. When he touched it, agony pierced every part of him, not just burning, but as if every bone, every breath was being made anew. He collapsed, the flame pouring into him, forging him a second time. He became not a thief of the flame, but its new bearer. When he finally lifted his head, the brazier had gone cold. The fire lived inside him now. Irian lay beside the empty pedestal. Smoke curled from his hands, but his eyes shone with dawn's light. With every breath, warmth traveled out, carried by the wind, down the mountain to every corner below. He took the fire, for the world, not for himself. He did not descend the mountain. He carried it within him. At once the air softened, the sky cleared, the stones shifted to let him pass. He was no longer an intruder, but a living torch. The flame within him brought not pain, but quiet life, wherever he set foot. Frost melted in his wake. The curse lingered, his steps unsteady, the burden heavy. The eternal flame was not only fire, it was memory. Irian felt every spark lit by its power. The first fires in caves, the torch that brightened great cities, the forge that built kingdoms. He felt the dark side, too. Wars waged in its name, temples destroyed, lessons lost. But this time, he would not use it as a weapon. He descended in silence, passing the remnants of gods once adored. Cerberus's cave was empty now. Death itself moved aside for the bringer of fire. Irian reached the world below. A frozen village waited. Without saying a word, he held out his hand. Fire leaped from his fingers, igniting a hearth, then others, each home blooming into warmth. People gathered, not in fear, but in wonder. His hair glimmered like molten gold, his skin cracked but glowing. He was burning, but becoming something new. He had not stolen the flame. He was the flame. No tomb was built for Irian, no statue, no hymn in temples, no funeral song. Yet he was never forgotten. With fire returned, wonders spread, huts lit on their own, frozen woods flourished overnight, forges worked faster, children claimed to see a shining figure by the fireplace. No one proved it, but all spoke of him. He walked until only ember and memory remained. Every last bit, body, voice, heart, turned to mist and heat scattered in his gift. The last place touched was his mother's forge, deserted, cold for years, until one night a wanderer claimed to see a glowing boy at the anvil. When he looked again, the forge was empty, but the fire danced, brighter than ever. It said Olympus trembled, sensing its loss, but the gods did not rage. They understood. Irian had not gone to war. He'd reminded them of their calling. The flame they once guarded now lived everywhere, in shared soup, in grieving candles, in the torches of rebels pressing forward in the dark. And always, his name traveled softly, on warm winds. Some whisper that if your fire suddenly grows, he is passing nearby. Others say, if you sit quietly by the flames, you might hear the pulse of a hammer on the anvil, slow and endless. Irian did not die. He became warmth, not as a god, not as a conqueror, but as a boy who gave everything, simply to help the world shine once more. In Sparta, where valor was inherited and courage etched deep, women were no less mighty. Among them lived one whose name was a quiet echo, even in marble halls, Leontia, daughter of General Adrastus. She was born as a crimson eclipse shadowed the sky. Midwives, trembling, claimed she was a gift from Irian himself. By 12, she conquered her brothers at wrestling. At 16, she led a hunt through the wild mountains and returned with 3 wild boars in tow. Leontia was not merely honored, she was feared. When she walked through the agora, men looked away, and women regarded her with awe. She kept silent unless spoken to, her words always measured, never wasted. Hidden behind her armor was something seldom seen, a softness untouched by blood or victory. At night, when all was quiet, Leontia stared at the stars, not to challenge, but to wonder. Something deep within her longed for more than conquest or marriage, for something without a name in Spartan law, peace, enchantment, the unknown. Every full moon, as the city slept and warriors' dreams faded, she felt drawn to the cliffs above the Eurotas. She shed her spear, her armor, her fierce name, and became simply a woman beneath the stars. She believed the world must be greater than Sparta, bigger than battles or pride. The feeling lived inside her, like a melody always just out of reach. One night, washed in silver light, she discovered it, a swan, gliding across a hidden pond in a secret grove. The bird was impossibly still, watching her, moonlight rippling across its feathers. It was beautiful in a way no warrior could be. From that night, Leontia's life began to shift, not toward war, but toward something gentler, more dangerous. The grove was untouched, shielded between 2 cliffs. Ancient trees bowed in silver arches, their branches lit by the moon. A lake reflected everything in calm, and the swan, neither white nor gray, its feathers shimmered like woven stars. It moved with a calm that unsettled her, held her gaze without fear or challenge. Leontia hesitated at the shore, every muscle tense, her hand resting by her blade. The swan approached and paused, bowing its head. She lowered herself, kneeling by the water's edge. She had seen many things, flaming encampments, dying soldiers, new life, but never anything so silent, so magical. She reached out. Her fingers touched warm feathers, like sunlight trapped in down. A feeling stirred within, neither fear nor awe, but something ancient and missing. Connection. The swan blinked, then retreated back to the center of the lake. Leontia remained, uncertain what had begun, but sure it was no accident. With each full moon she returned, and so did the swan. No words passed, only presence. Their quiet ritual grew, marked by autumn's leaves and spring's blossoms. Battle waged below, but in the grove, time paused. Leontia brought simple gifts: fruit, cloth, carved trinkets. The swan never showed interest, but she kept bringing them, guided by instinct. The swan met her every time, dipping its head, gliding calmly alongside her. Sometimes it circled, sometimes it remained at her side, warmth radiating like an invisible sun. Gradually, Leontia began to share her thoughts, not as a leader, but as someone longing to be heard. She spoke of her father's distance, her empty victories, her late-night wanderings. The swan never answered, but its listening became her comfort. Months passed, and being near the swan, she stopped feeling alone. She readied herself for each visit, braiding her hair, smoothing her dress, sitting quietly by the waterside. The swan aged neither in feather nor feather stroke. It never changed, yet seemed always waiting, needing her presence. She should have been afraid. There were old stories about gods appearing as animals, about tragedy for those who loved them. But Leontia no longer trusted stories. She trusted the way her hand fitted on the swan's curved neck, the way it bent its head when she sang, the way it stayed for her. Love blossomed without words, its roots silent and deep. The swan, of course, was more than it seemed. Once these wings spanned the sky, these hands played the lyre that woke the dawn. Its true name had been whispered in temples: Apollo, god of light, melody, and vision. Long ago, Apollo committed no crime of blade or rebellion, but of speaking truth, protesting cruelty handed from Olympus to earth. He was not killed but bound by a spell, stripped of voice, of power, forced to live as a swan, not to humble him, but to remind him that even light can be caged by shadow. The curse came with a single, aching condition. Should any mortal discover his identity, he would remain this way forever. So Apollo drifted, hidden on still waters, silent through ages, watching mortals forget his hymns and his light until Leontia came. Her presence awoke in him a hope even Olympus had forgotten. He never meant to be found, but he could not resist her return, her words in the grove. She was no priestess, no chosen maiden, just a woman forged in hardship, who saw not a legend, but something sacred, something waiting. He dared not speak, nor reveal his name. Yet, in a single glance, a pause of silence, he answered every unasked question. Slowly, impossibly, he loved her in return. In Sparta, time alone was honored, but only for so long. When Leontia began disappearing, her absence was quickly felt. Each month, as the moon shone full, she would leave behind the barracks, the training grounds, and the ever-watchful gaze of family and commanders. At first, no one pressed her for answers. She was Leontia, steadfast, untouchable, her devotion to Sparta written in each scar. Yet, Sparta flourished on order, on rules, on discipline. Love, especially hidden love, had no place in a city built from stone and iron. Quiet gossip began to slip between the walls. She wanders, voices murmured. She speaks less at council. Her training is sharp, but her fury is gone. All of it was true. Leontia had grown different. Her body moved with precision, but the bite behind each strike was gone. Her words no longer wounded, and there was a gentle look in her eyes where none had been before. Sometimes, by moonlight, she would smile softly, as if cherishing something the gods themselves could not touch. The first to notice was her father, Commander Adratos, a man whose features never softened, who had raised daughters to lead with strength, not with feeling. One evening, he called her aside, claiming there was training to discuss. When the others left, His voice grew bare, almost brittle. "What keeps you from finding rest?" he asked. Leonthi held her silence. His face darkened, and he warned, "Never forget who you are." But a part of her had already let go of the woman Sparta had made. Even as she changed, the city watched. A patrol trailed her once, slipping behind as she left the city walls and wandered towards the cliffs. They lost sight of her among groves of olives. She knew too well how to vanish. But now there was worry, and there were rumors. Some priests whispered that the full moon carried unspoken messages, and that the lakes outside Sparta were stirring in unnatural ways. A warrior leaving each full moon, they said, might mean madness, or perhaps the gaze of the gods. Leonthi could feel the walls closing in around her. Eyes that once looked away now watched every move. Her old silence, once her shield, had turned to suspicion. And yet, she slipped out again, returning to the grove, returning to him. In that place, under the silver light touching a single feather, she forgot Sparta's noise and fears and rules. She let the danger slip into shadow. All that mattered was not being seen, because if anyone knew the truth beating quietly in her chest, it would ruin them both. That night, the moon hung low, round and golden, heavy as a dying ember. Leonthi stood at her table, hands trembling, unable to fasten the last piece of her armor. Something had shifted. She felt it in the quiet tremor of earth beneath her feet, as if the ground sensed what she could not say. Their last meeting, the swan had seemed uneasy, edgier, sharp-eyed, feathers bristling with every wind. Instead of resting, it circled her, then settled beside her, its warmth somehow piercing. That night, sleep would not come. When it did, there were strange dreams. She stood in a grove washed with silver, hands glittering with gold dust. In front of her loomed a statue, half man, half swan, wings caught in stillness, its face clear yet empty. She reached to it, calling a name that burned on her lips, though she did not know how she knew it: Apollo. Suddenly the statue cracked, and a deep voice echoed not from the air, but from within her very bones. "Truth will freeze what love has kindled." She woke gasping, her heart pounding, the name still forceful on her tongue. She tried to believe it was just night's fancy, but warriors sense true danger, and this was not an ordinary sign. This was a warning. The following morning, Leonthi left the city sooner than usual, the ache in her chest growing sharper with each step. She ignored her usual trails, her feet leading her into hills she had never seen, through woods untouched by memory. There, beneath hanging ivy and draping moss, she found an ancient altar, its stone split and traced with a single word, faded but undeniable: Apollo. Everything suddenly made sense. The warmth of the swan, its thoughtful glances, the dreams, the unease that gripped her. He had appeared each full moon for a reason. He was not merely enchanted, but something more. He was a god, and she had broken a sacred trust. She stumbled away, a rustle of feathers following close behind. The swan appeared, as it always did, but its silent presence was no longer soothing. It looked at her with a gentle sadness, as if it already understood what she now knew: that the secret was out, and so was the end. The grove, once quiet and serene, now seemed to pulse with slow, ancient energy. The moonlight trembled upon the water. The trees pressed in, still witnesses to the unraveling of a secret older than Sparta, or even the gods themselves. Leonthi stood unmoving by the altar, the name Apollo ringing through her like the clang of a spear on stone. She turned, as though hoping the truth could be undone, but it was too late. The swan waited, no longer gliding, no longer bright, just standing there, dim and flickering like a candle running out. Leonthi stepped closer, lost for words, wondering if words were even possible. "I know," she breathed. For one moment, the air hushed. A single feather floated down from the swan's back, drifting through the moonlight, disappearing into dust the instant it touched the old altar. And then, things began to change. The swan's neck arched, not in elegant motion, but in pain. Its body shook, feathers coming undone in streams of golden light, wings bent into arms, feet splitting into trembling human toes pressing deep into the soil. Where the swan had been, now knelt a man, unclothed, radiant, wounded. Apollo, his hair shining like sunrise, his skin glowing softly as embers behind marble. But his eyes were filled with grief, with the certainty of what must happen. Leonthi stepped back, covering her mouth, her love unspoken yet suddenly unbearable. He tried to form words, but the enchantment was not yet gone. His voice cracked, like thunder from storms forgotten. "You were never meant to know," he finally managed, his words barely more than wind. "That was the only rule." She sank to her knees at his side, tears streaking her cheeks as if carving rivers into stone. "I did not mean for this," she said. He smiled, once, not out of joy, but as a goodbye. "I know." Without further warning, the earth rumbled, a silent, deep tremor, as if fate itself passed sentence. His brightness faded. His skin began to stiffen, his reach stilled forever mid-motion. Apollo was turning to stone. Leonthi could only bear witness as love became myth. The moment she spoke his name, the curse set in for the last time. Apollo's form, once full of endless motion, stiffened piece by piece. The inner light dimmed, like molten metal cooling in air. His golden hair grew pale and rigid, marble threads instead of living strands, as Zeus's punishment sealed his fate. There would be no forgiveness. Leonthi grasped his hands, still warm, still faintly trembling. But she could feel the hardness creeping in, taking him from flesh to stone. He squeezed her hand just once, gently, then let go, his fingers forever frozen. She shook her head in protest. "No, no, please." But curses do not listen, especially those spun by divine will. Apollo's chest rose for a final breath, then went still. Feathery wings halfway formed stopped in place, his knees bent in silent pain, his face caught between love and sorrow, eyes unblinking, already seeing nothing. And then, only stillness. A quiet deeper than any battlefield, deeper than the waiting before a charge. This was not peace, but the hush left behind when something precious is lost. Leonthi knelt there, her forehead resting on his cold, unyielding hand, a hand that once gathered stars, now only stone. Her tears slid down marble fingers, falling slowly, one by one, into the earth, as solemn as any funeral drum. Shadows lengthened, the moon slipping behind a veil of cloud as if the sky too could not bear to watch. No lightning, no godly outcry, for the punishment was finished. Zeus had decided. The swan would fly no more, and Apollo, god of light, remained a statue, wordless, eternal. Long after the transformation, Leonthi did not leave. She stayed beside what was left, arms holding the stone form as if clinging to warmth that would never return. There were no shouts, no curses hurled at the sky. No Spartans knew her sorrow, no warrior comrades gathered to see. Only the wind, the patient trees, and the marble figure of a god whose love had been gentle, not fiery. Stillness, not spectacle. Leonthe never returned home. She left her armor lying near the altar, took off her sword, and let her battle name drift away on the quiet lake wind. The woman who once towered among kings now knelt, year after year, beside an unmoving monument. The grove, dim and secret, became her world. Every full moon, she came again, never missing, never late, and brought only herself. No gifts, no incense, no prayers, just memory. Sometimes she would touch the cold hand of the statue. Sometimes she spoke, or softly hummed a tune known only to her heart. Other times she only gazed at the water and let the silence speak for her. Soon, people in nearby villages whispered about her. They said a woman haunted the hills, wandering beneath the moon with eyes deep as distant stars. Some declared she was mad. Others insisted she had been chosen. But none dared disturb the grove. The seasons turned. Winters came and passed. Kingdoms changed hands. The gods withdrew their voices, but Leonthe remained. She grew older, but her spirit did not fail. Her endurance was no longer that of a soldier, but of an olive tree. Roots gripping one patch of earth through storm after storm. And still, the statue persisted. Apollo, wings half-formed, eyes fixed on the place where Leonthe always sat, a single moment held in marble, safe from time. Some visitors believed the statue felt warm to their touch. Some whispered that if you pressed a hand to his chest, you could sense a faint rhythm, like the memory of a heartbeat. Then, one last moonlit night, Leonthe returned. She settled beside Apollo's statue, resting her head upon his shoulder, and never left again. Weeks later, villagers found her there, peaceful, with closed eyes and a small, quiet smile. The statue seemed to shimmer then, softly bright from within. No one touched Apollo. They built no shrine, held no ceremony. But the story spread. Now, when the moon is bright and silent, some say a swan glides across the lake, not to be seen, but simply to remember. Melanion was not born amidst luxury or marble pillars, but beneath a willow tree during a storm that split the night. His mother, herself a midwife's child, wrapped him in old linen as thunder boomed and birds scattered, yet he did not cry. From the moment he could stand, music followed Melanion. Water sang as he knelt to drink, leaves shivered in time with his passing steps. No master showed him how. Sound was already part of him. By 10, he could echo any bird and twist their calls into songs. By 16, his lyre playing drew even the hardest warriors to pause and listen. He sang of rivers, of brothers gone to battle, of fields before war's storm, songs that made even the proud weep without realizing. People called him a wonder, a blessing, a child touched by the divine. He never claimed such things himself. Melanion wandered from village to village. He gave music freely, never asking for gold or praise. His voice soothed those with fever. His hands brought calm to troubled hearts. Once he sang for a dying child, and the little one slipped away with a peaceful smile, as if gently carried into sleep. But not all who listened were mere mortals. One spring evening, as Melanion strummed beside a shining river, the world fell into unnatural stillness. The wind slowed, the water calmed, frogs quieted. Then the muses appeared. 9 of them, stepping softly through the veil between realms, dressed in brightness and melody. Each bore her own strength, history, tragedy, dance, poems, and more. Their gazes were wise, not cruel, not kind, simply knowing. They heard Melanian's song, and to his wonder they sang in return. 9 voices woven in harmony, older than speech itself. Melanian closed his eyes and knew, without doubt, how to join them. His voice didn't blend with theirs. It reshaped them. When the last echoes faded, even the stars seemed to draw near. The eldest muse, Calla, gently touched his forehead. "You are no ordinary boy," she told him. "You are meant to carry a gift." And so Melanian became the bard whose voice could stir the sky itself. From then on, Melanian was no longer simply a talented human. He had been chosen, marked, whispered about. In the quiet lands of Mount Hile, where few dared to go, the muses invited him into their sacred space. Among ancient trees, under open sky, he learned not by words, but by living. Calla showed how to shape a tale into music. Clea whispered stories of ages into his dreams. Terpisa danced with bare feet as he watched and played. Ute placed her flute in his palm and said only, "Listen." And listen he did, to music, and to the truths hidden within moments. The silence before a thunderstorm, the ache of longing, the wonder in a child's first view of snow. The muses gave Melanian not power, but understanding, and asked only that he share the beauty they passed to him, not with gods, but with mortals, the lost, the heartbreak, and the hopeful. To let them remember music could heal as well as hurt, could comfort, and could awaken. At first, Melanian did as they wished. He played in city squares and on lonely hills, for rulers and for those with nothing. His songs stitched together broken families, encouraged the fearful, healed old wounds, and, for some, brought peace between even the fiercest enemies. Yet, as his abilities grew, so did a hunger he could not shake. He longed to capture music the muses had never given, to find that which no god had touched. Late at night, he would craft pieces beyond mortal words, a melody that seemed to move the very fabric of time. His heart whispered, "This song is for you alone." He never told the muses what he was making. Some part of him felt the divine did not deserve ownership of every beauty he found, that perhaps some wonders should belong only to the one who unearthed them. The muses saw it in him, not in his hands, but in his gaze, fixed somewhere beyond them, toward a destiny that felt too large to share. One day, Melanian slipped away from the crowds, rejecting applause and flattery, and disappeared into the darker folds of Mount Hel, deeper and deeper, where only echoes of ancient gods remained. There, in a cave bright with crystal, he began gently building the final song. It came in bits and fragments, sometimes with dreams, sometimes with the sound of thunder, sometimes from a hush that frightened even him. He didn't compose it. He uncovered it, as if listening to the secrets of the world. The melody would not hold still. It shifted with every breath, pulsed in his heartbeat. It was not music for crowds. It was truth made audible. He spent months, maybe years, in that cave. Days and nights blurred as the world waited outside. Birds stopped mid-flight, streams quieted, trees bent towards the windless mountain. The sky grew silent, and far above, in remote Olympus, even the gods paused in their endless work. The fates, never seen looking away, paused. Their threads whispered, "A line trembles." At last, Melanian finished. The final sound faded, and not even the cave dared echo what it had witnessed. The gods waited. The muses waited. But Melanian did not return. He kept the melody hidden, and in doing so, changed everything. Silence, once restful, now grew heavy with consequences. When he emerged, the world seemed smaller. The skies that once stretched vast now felt tight and pale compared to the song humming within his bones. Crowds surrounded him, musicians, poets, priests. They begged for a taste of the magic they believed he now held. Melanian smiled gently. Not yet. Only the muses noticed the shift. They appeared to him at dusk, stepping forth from the stars, their robes glowing with inspiration. But their eyes spoke of sadness and warning. You were given beauty to carry, Arita said gently. But beauty uncared for grows cold, offered Clea. Kala added, You must let it be heard. Melanian lowered his head. I can't see it wasted. Their faces fell, as if hurt by his words. You think mortals do not deserve it? Terpisa's voice quivered. You believe you alone should keep it? He did not answer in anger, just with a quiet certainty. Yes. The silence between them was sharp and cold. Then, you are not ours, Kala said softly. Not because you've gone farther than we have, but because you refuse to share. She vanished, and the others with her. Yet, the gods still waited. Even Zeus, who rarely troubled himself with mortal lives, paused to listen. Hades, in his shadowed realm, turned his attention upward. They hoped for a note, an echo. But Melanian released nothing. He refused to write the song, to hum it even in private. It remained entrusted only to himself. He played other songs, and they were still beautiful. But those who heard could sense something missing, an empty space where wonder had once shone bright. The melody that could move the stars was now locked within pride. The muses watched from afar and saw he had bound the gift to his need, not to the world. One night a curse began, not with fire, not with thunder, but as memory. Melanian settled beneath open sky, held within the same quiet he once cherished. Sleep overtook him softly. There, in a dream, the final song returned, brighter, more perfect than before. He heard notes he'd never dared imagine, chords that carried him through sunlight and rain, through ocean and sky. He wept, in awe, in joy, in surrender. And then, nothing. He woke, and the music was gone, erased as if it had never been. At first, Melanian thought it a cruel trick of sleep. He grabbed his lyre and struggled to recall even a hint, but every attempt met only silence. That night, he rushed to bed early, heart pounding, and received the song in his dreams anew. It wrapped around him, real as breath, and when daylight touched his window, it vanished again, without a trace. Desperate, he began scribbling by candlelight, tried every trick to net a phrase or bar. Yet each day the melody vanished like morning dew. He quit playing for crowds. His house grew dim. He forsook food and comfort, living only to chase that lost music. The muses, watching in sadness, whispered, He had a gift and chose not to share. Now he alone will hear and never remember. It was not revenge, but a balance restored. Melanian would hear the final song each night, only in dreams, always beyond his waking reach. As days passed, the longing twisted into suffering. Each sunrise felt like a wound. Hope withered into madness, for nothing pains a musician more than losing the greatest melody he has ever known, and sensing that it's still there, but never quite his. He lost count of night and day, His existence became a circle of sweet torment and emptiness. Every evening, sleep brought the song close, like a beloved come home from far away. Every morning he woke alone, searching for something he could not explain. He tried to outsmart the curse, enlisted others to listen as he slept, called on seers and scribes, sang to mirrors, seeking any reflection of the tune. But nothing worked. Fingertips grew thin, his lyre strings broke, robes hung loose, but he did not care. In his dreams, the music waited, always. Waking felt like punishment. He cursed the sun, shattered windows, and locked himself away from the light. Still, the melody left him when day broke. He no longer looked like the bard the world had cherished. He was ragged, wild-eyed, his once golden voice now rough from endless humming. Melanian wandered, not for food or shelter, but for memory. "Have you heard it?" he'd plead to strangers in dusty roads. "A song that never begins and never ends, that only comes while sleeping?" At first people pitied him, but then they grew wary, and some threw harsh words or stones. Melanian sang wild snatches in the streets, bits and pieces no one else understood. For him, they were keys to a locked door, clues to the missing melody. Each failure ended with laughter, then tears, then laughter again. Every night, the song returned, and every morning, it escaped anew. From a distance, the muses watched. They did not scold, but mourned. He had once been their finest vessel. Now he was a cracked jar, brimming only in darkness. The song he had hidden now broke him, not with fury, but with emptiness. He stopped living in the world. His feet walked, but his spirit drifted elsewhere, caught between dream and daylight, present and past, clinging to a music he could never truly hold. He wandered through cities that once celebrated him. Children who ran to listen now hid from his shadow. His name, which once inspired, became a warning. Do not become a Melanian. He slept in fields, under trees, in quiet chapels or cold thresholds. He no longer asked for food, just a place to lie down and hope for one more night with the song. The curse never failed. Each sleep brought the perfect melody. Each dawn left him empty. The cruelty was not in the silence, but in remembering what he had lost without knowing why. He spoke to the night sky, to trees, to faint shadows. Sometimes he sang to travelers, urging them to return a sound he believed had passed through their lips. Once he trailed a family for half a day, convinced a boy had carried the tune. When hope faded, he wept, then waited for night. Always, the song visited him, never his to keep. Some who saw Melanian swore he still hummed softly as he slept, that if you pressed your ear near at midnight, you'd catch the faintest tune, like nothing else in the world, but only then, only in dreams. The muses withdrew, the gods lost interest. Melanian, once celebrated, wandered as a living echo, a song neither world nor memory could grasp, even as he could never let go. Melanian thinned like dusk itself. His skin, once bright with youth, faded pale. The voice that had stirred gods now seemed rough with loss. He searched no longer for food or companionship or the song. He simply walked. One calm evening he reached a cliff above the sea. It was quiet. No city, no travelers, no prying eyes. Only the wind, the endless blue, and the rising stars. He sat down near a stone, salt air weaving through his worn hair. He did not weep, did not reach for music. Instead, he closed his eyes. The dream came, unchanged, but now clear, unbroken, without the fog of worry or struggle. The final song was not only a sound, but a world, Melanian found himself within it, walking barefoot on chords soft as meadow grass, starry sky pulsing to its rhythm. Here, he was not just a listener, but a part of the song. His voice no longer wavered or searched. It soared, sure and free. He saw every note he had lost, every line he had mourned, and knew at last the song had never truly abandoned him. It had grown when he let it go. It was no longer his alone. He was simply a witness. In that last dream, there was no punishment, only peace, a letting go. When morning arrived, Melanian did not move. The breeze lifted gently around him, as if carrying away a last soft sigh. A shepherd, passing by, found him at rest, hands peaceful at his heart, cradling what no one else could see. There was no written record, no shrine. Overhead, seabirds soared in swirling patterns, as if they alone heard a music in the air. And for a moment the sea itself sang, not in words, not in ordinary melody, but with something older, something Melanian had finally surrendered to. He was buried beneath the lone olive tree on that cliff. No priests, no crowds, just the shepherd and a handful of villagers who remembered. There was no monument, only stillness. But quiet can carry truth farther than any song. In the years that followed, tales drifted across the land. Travelers claimed that beneath a new moon, by that cliff, you might hear a melody in the breeze. Not a whole song, but just enough to make you pause, just enough to make your heart ache. Children sometimes dreamed of music they could not name. Musicians sometimes woke at night in tears, not knowing why. And when a bard sat alone at dusk, feeling unseen, a sudden perfect chord would slip beneath their fingers and vanish by morning. The muses did not speak, did not envy, did not take back the song. They understood. Melanian was not a warning or a hero, but a legend. A spirit whose punishment came from keeping beauty hidden, and who found peace not by spreading it wide, but by letting it go. That last music was never written or performed, never sung in the grand halls or temples, but it lives, quietly, in the hush before sleep, in the silence after the last chord, and in the strange, aching difference you hear in the waves when sorrow is close. Melanian's melody became part of the world itself, not to be remembered by name, but to be felt. A whisper in bones, a wordless tune in the quiet. And those who hear it, even for a heartbeat, will never forget the silence that comes after. They say, if you stand alone, on the right cliff, on the right night, with just the wind for company, you might hear a note that belongs to no world but this one, a half moment, a breath. And then you will understand why Melanian could never let it go.